We can apply deductive reasoning to determine if something is purely hallucinatory or has aspects of the supernatural. There is a board-certified psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Richard Gallagher who became something of a consultant on demonic possessions. When exorcists want to rule out potential mental illness before considering demonic possession, they call Dr. Gallagher. He said that a woman who was about 90 pounds threw a 200-pound Lutheran deacon across the room. We call that sort of thing anecdotal evidence. More specifically, this single incident from a first-person's perspective would suggest a supernatural explanation because natural explanations fall short. Considering the evidence for the supernatural that I have mentioned in previous videos, it would be unwise to immediately exclude all supernatural explanations for the things that we observe. Even though that we don't have indisputable evidence of demonic possession, various scientific books and articles have investigated the matter. For example, The Social Scientific Study of Exorcism in Christianity and The Growing Evidence for Demonic Possession, What Should Psychiatry's Response Be? I will use both of these sources throughout the video as well as others, and the point that I'm making here is that this topic is not simply a matter of faith or religion, rather one can and should study it through the lens of science. Many videos that claim to show possession are typically faked, and I believe the Vatican has rules against filming exorcisms, supposedly for privacy reasons. I think it's strange that the Vatican would do such a thing like that because it's sort of like preventing police officers from wearing body cameras. It's the sort of thing that prevents accountability from taking place if an individual is not being treated properly, like in the case of Anna Elizabeth Michel. Her case is memorable because both her parents and the priest involved were allegedly convicted of negligent homicide in her death. Also, sometimes people will attribute something to supernatural evil simply because they don't understand it and they have a specific perspective that biases their perception of the entire world. We can use deductive reasoning to determine if something is caused by religious beliefs. This commenter revealed that he was once a Christian but had to give this up because he had a spiritual psychosis as a result. So he had to distance himself from religion and spirituality in order to stop the psychological harm. Though it would be clear to the unbiased observer that he didn't do anything wrong by stepping away from Christianity, this commenter obviously still felt guilty for what he had done. He said that he needed to pray, read the Bible, and repent more. This seems to come from the idea that humans are flawed and that God is perfect, therefore the human will always be the problematic part of the equation. So with Christianity and probably other religions, you can have your sense of reality damaged by such beliefs, but since you feel guilty for stepping away from those beliefs, you will inevitably come back to them, hoping that this time it will be different. Again, from an unbiased perspective, this just sounds like an abusive relationship with religion. This commenter wasn't alone though. Another person mentioned that his strong spirituality is what caused a series of psychotic breaks, so he had to distance himself from his religious beliefs. Again, he still believes in God and wants guidance from God, but he is unaware that it would be better to have a belief system that does not damage him. Another person mentioned that their, quote, demonic experiences stopped after they became an atheist. She had nightmares, sleep paralysis, and feelings of dread frequently. As her belief in God faded away, so did the negative things that Christians would attribute to demons. She finally says, quote, that line of thinking encourages the fear of wanting scary stuff to happen. We also have an interesting perspective from a Christian YouTuber. He makes the argument that saintly Christian people suffered what many would call demonic harassment. Therefore, he concludes that being holy does not protect you from evil and seems to rather invite attacks rather than prevent them. He also makes the argument that demons are contributing to your ease and comfort with the intent to keep you living in sin away from God. Why don't we illustrate this concept with a hypothetical example? Let's say it's cold and snowy outside, and you have a warm cup of cocoa with marshmallows. You're nice and snuggled up in a soft blanket. So if you're not praying and doing religious things that other people say you should do, the demons are actually helping you be more comfy and happy in that snuggly moment. Since this person also says that God uses adversity to get you out of comfortable situations, we have a complete reversal of good and evil here. Using this logic, the demons are making your life happier and God is making you suffer, supposedly for a higher cause. You can obviously see how ridiculous his idea is now, but he could only come to that conclusion through not understanding the cause and effect, that being very religious and Christian seems to invite negative experiences. Continuing with this trend, a priest by the name of Vincent Lampert tries to explain why atheists aren't targeted by demons. His answer is essentially that demons would not benefit from antagonizing someone who doesn't believe in God. From a surface-level Christian perspective, this obviously makes sense, but the Christian perspective is obviously biased against coming to conclusions that would undermine their beliefs. If we consider the nature of a truly irredeemably evil spiritual being, we might say that atheists who hold materialistic beliefs are extremely vulnerable, as they would actively dismiss all possibility of supernatural influence on their lives. This would allow a demon to potentially bring about the complete ruin and misery of an atheist without the atheist ever understanding what was happening. If we start with the assumption that demons are sadistic and like bringing about ruin and misery, then we would conclude that materialistic atheists are prime targets. Regardless, Father Lampert's thoughts are simply one perspective, and it is not a conclusion based on personal experience like the previously mentioned 3 different people that had negative experiences as a result of their Christian beliefs. Let's consider the possibility that your beliefs have some degree of effect on what you are susceptible to experiencing. Atheists are not constantly plagued by demons, and this very well could be caused by the fact that they do not believe that they can be possessed. Father Dan Rehill is an exorcist, and in an interview he mentioned the exorcism of a woman. After he had done the rites of exorcism to her, she was still not behaving normally. He continued praying for her until he gets the idea to tell the woman to turn to a nearby painting of Our Lady of Guadalupe and ask Our Lady for her help. The possessed woman does this, goes into massive convulsions, and then she finally feels normal. Father Rehill states that it wasn't the rite of exorcism itself that caused this result, but rather it was the woman's action of petitioning Our Lady of Guadalupe. This is very interesting to me because the Vatican is supposed to get its authority through God, and Father Rehill is supposed to get his authority to do exorcisms from the Vatican. Logically, it should be the case that Father Rehill should get his authority from God and have the ability to immediately cast out the demon if he is doing what God wants. It doesn't really make sense that the invocation of Our Lady of Guadalupe, a lower authority than God, would be more effective than God at causing the demon to leave. This outcome only really makes sense when you think of this situation from the perspective that the woman herself finally made the conscious decision to reject the demon. I mention this exorcism because it highlights that the rite of exorcism that was done in the name of God failed to be effective, and that it seems to be the case that the woman's personal choice was ultimately what was effective. Let's say there is a hypothetical world where an all-powerful, all-knowing deity is completely against demonic possession. This deity sees demons as profane and chooses to use his supreme power to make demonic possessions literally impossible. They simply cannot occur in this hypothetical. We can use our logical deduction to conclude that we do not live in this hypothetical world. We can also conclude that it doesn't make sense for our perfect, all-powerful deity to allow beings of pure evil to corrupt humans through demonic possession. There can be no greater good that occurs when a deity watches idly as demons violently steal our free will and treat us like their personal meat puppets. An argument that we are too limited and ignorant to understand a deity's plan to allow such a thing like demonic possession to happen is simply a logical fallacy. More specifically, this argument is the combination of 2 logical fallacies, the first being the appeal to mystery/inscrutability fallacy, and the second being the appeal to authority fallacy. Appealing to a supposed ultimate authority, God, and assuming that we cannot possibly know such an authority's plans is a logical nightmare. Some Christians will try to make the argument that demonic possession is evidence that the Bible is true, and therefore God exists. Not only is this argument based on the non sequitur fallacy, but it would be more appropriate to argue that demonic possession is proof that an all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving Christian God does not exist. So we should be asking ourselves, is the Church's portrayal and understanding of demons 100% accurate? The following is a quote from a book that demonstrates the credibility of Christianity and the Church on the topic of demons. Quote, "Nothing has retarded the growth of scientific medicine during the past 2,000 years so much as the iron grip of theology in maintaining practices based on belief in the supernatural origin of disease." End quote. Christianity has attributed the cause of every disease to demons. The reason that this belief has stopped is because of science. So we could easily say that Christianity has caused almost immeasurable damage to people's lives due to a profound ignorance that prevented people from realizing the true causes of diseases. The problem with belief, Christian or otherwise, is that it requires some degree of ignorance for a belief to exist. For something to be a belief, there simply can't be enough evidence to prove that a belief is actually fact. We should not be satisfied with beliefs because belief is limited only to the individual that believes it. Facts apply to everyone in comparison. The major rewards that Christianity tempts you with is the promise of God's love, an eternity in a paradisical afterlife, and perhaps the ability to have your prayers answered. You don't need God to have a good afterlife, as I mentioned in my Secular Science of Hell video. Likewise, you don't need God to find a deeply meaningful and encompassing sense of love in the afterlife. Finally, as I explained in my Secular Science of Miracles and Magic video, you don't need a deity to answer your prayers because it is the human intent behind the prayer that has the ability to potentially supernaturally answer it. So Christianity is majorly wrong in its supernatural understanding of the world, and we have to take a step back and reassess what exactly is going on. We have to admit that many of us are coming to the table with a biased and imperfect perspective. The Christian view of the world tends to label a lot of the things that have spiritual significance but are not part of Christianity as part of the occult. One of these things is the practice of smudging. Smudging is burning something, commonly sage, in order to purify, cleanse, or bless. This practice is done by Wiccans, Native Americans, and others. So, in many of these belief systems, the intent of some people is to use smudging to make evil spirits leave. This is obviously incompatible with the Christian view that smudging is part of the occult, and therefore doing it will open you up to demonic attack. If smudging did in fact invite evil spirits, then different belief systems would not have chosen it as a way of forcing out evil spirits. Christianity has a somewhat similar practice of smudging, yet it's called burning incense. The Bible mentions the use of incense and its spiritual value. Christians also burn incense for exorcisms, so the Christian view of smudging is nonsensical and hypocritical. Within charismatic Christianity, quote, excessive charismatic behaviors are seen as either a sign of possession or the sort of thing that provides an opportunity for Satan to possess you. I mention this not because it's actually dangerous, but rather because it's blatantly hypocritical. If charismatic behavior is considered to be normal and positive for particular denominations, then it makes absolutely no sense to classify the more enthusiastic behavior as somehow being evil. This demonstrates that the characteristics of spiritually dangerous behavior are both arbitrary and caused by cultural influence. To continue doing charismatic behavior with the belief that it might eventually lead to demonic possession or some kind of satanic influence is not only hypocritical but blatantly ridiculous.